This video is for all the artists. Wow. Okay. So I've always struggled to call myself a creative person. I've preferred creative adjacent or an arts appreciationist. And I think the reason why I struggle to call myself creative is because maybe creativity doesn't come as easy to me as I've seen it come to other people. So I'm a very linear thinker, and I think a lot of creative people I've met are people that think outside the box, which I don't typically do. Or maybe it's because I haven't devoted a lot of my time and energy into being creative. Again, I know people who literally give their entire lives to being creative, whereas I very much like stability and I'm the person who will chase like a 9 to 5. I need something that I can rely on to feed me. And so I do not put so much of my energy and time into being creative. So it feels like I haven't earned the title of creative, but I can confidently say that I am an arts appreciationist, and I can talk about why I think art is important forever. So that's what we're going to do today, for however long this video takes. I believe artists create what is called a third space. Someone I know, shout out to Steve from Screenfish, he describes a third space as neutral ground. So whether you agree or disagree with an artist's worldview or ethics or morality, when you decide to watch a movie or read a book or listen to music or go to an exhibit, you are accepting an invitation to step into the artist's worldview for however long the experience takes. And typically, these mediums they're safe enough for you to engage in a worldview that may differ from yours, and safe enough for you to engage in a way where you can at least begin to see why and how this worldview came to be. I also like to look at what the third space does for the artist. So I think a third space is a space where hybrid identities can be expressed. And I actually did my master's thesis on this. My master's thesis was called The Hybrid's Place, an auto-ethnographic exploration of the relationship between cultural hybridity and media. So I looked at myself as someone who grew up in Nigeria, but who grew up watching a lot of American and Western TV shows, and examined what that did to my cultural identity. And it was a lot of fun. I had a good time writing that paper. That's a different story, and that's not entirely what I want to talk about in this video, but I do think it's interesting to think of human beings as hybrids of some form. We're all a collection of identities, whether they are cultural or not. This is what intersectionality is, and all these different identities are living in one person. And so I think art, this third space, is a space where that complexity of the human nature can be expressed. Critical theorist, and I'm sorry again, I wrote a paper on this, but critical theorist Tomi Baba is credited with coming up with the idea of the third space. And in his 1994 book titled The Location of Culture, he states, it is the in-between space that carries the burden of the meaning of culture. And I always saw that as this third space, in this case art or media, is a space we can use to tell us what our culture truly is. It was by reading him that I began to put words to what I felt art does, and it's honestly where I got the inspiration to come up with the idea for this channel and for my website, Story to Culture. Interestingly though, there are some criticisms to the idea of hybridity. So there is an anthropologist who goes by the name of Jonathan Friedman, and he argues that the idea of hybridity is elitist. In a 1997 article, he poses this question about hybrid identities. For whom, one might ask, is such cultural transmigration a reality? In the works of the post-colonial border crossers, it is always the poet, the artist, the intellectual who sustains this displacement and objectifies it in the printed word. But who reads the poetry? And what are the other kinds of identification occurring in the lower reaches of social reality? And in a sense, I see where he's coming from, because in order for you to call yourself a cultural hybrid, you need to have been exposed to different cultures, and that in itself comes with a certain level of privilege. But since this video is talking about art, and specifically TV and film, I'm going to focus on those, and I would argue that through engaging with media, engaging with stories, engaging with TV, some sort of transmission of ideas, transmission of cultures is happening in those mediums. And that's what I want to explore today. But yeah, this is the ethos, I say, of why I like talking about engaging with stories, why this channel exists, and honestly, why I think the title of creative carries such a heavy weight to me. This might sound very artsy, and I have been around a lot of artists recently, but I think that the title of artist is very much a higher calling. And so in this video, I want to look at a few different movies that I've seen that reflect that for me. So strap in. It's a new day. It's giving office. The first film I want to talk about today is Ernest Cole, Lost and Found. If you saw my TIFF recap video, I did mention that I saw it at TIFF this year, and I found it very insightful. So I want to talk about it a little bit in this video. But first of all, trigger warning for the rest of this video. I realized that all the films I picked to talk about in this video are kind of sad or have a sad undertone, which I didn't mean to do, but they all do. They all kind of have some existentialism in them. So please be prepared if you want to go check them out, that they are very sad. I do think that there is some beautiful meaning in them as well, and that's what I want to bring out in this video. But if you want to see the films, just prepare your minds. Also, I use the word burden in this video, and I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way, like a heaviness. Although sometimes that unfortunately plays into what we're talking about. But I mean burden as in the sense of something you have to carry, like a responsibility. And something I learned about Ernest Cole by watching Ernest Cole, Lost and Found, is that he seemed to have a strong responsibility to his art. It seemed like to him the best and purest way for him to create, especially as a photographer, was to capture what the culture around him was. And a perfect example of that is his 1967 book, House of Bondage, which showed the real lives of Black people living in apartheid South Africa. And Ernest Cole seemed to stick to that purity of art, to stick to that feeling or need to capture what the culture was, even when he was exiled by the government. And in apartheid South Africa and in the segregated United States where he is exiled to, the things that he was seeing around him, the culture that was reflected around him, seemed to be that of pain. Not seemed, was that of pain, because he was noticing the same sorts of discrimination that were happening against his people in South Africa, in the United States. Now, the world is very beautiful, and there is a lot of art that captures that beauty. And in fact, Ernest Cole, through his letters in the film, he does mention how he wants to capture more beauty. He wants to capture more themes of love. But unfortunately, and as is the case sometimes with people of color, the things that other people wanted him to talk about, the things that other people wanted him to show, were themes of pain that they were used to seeing from him. I think it's hard when you're a person, whether you're creative or not, that sees both. You see the beauty of the world and you see the pain of the world. And if you're someone who creates, focusing too much on one or the other can start to feel like a lie. I think that's why we have the debates, for example, with telling Black stories. And if someone focuses too much on slavery, then they're just into Black trauma. But then if you speak too much about Black joy, then are you disregarding the realities of Black people? And that's why we have that back and forth with it. It's because both those things exist, but when you focus too much on one or the other, it starts to feel like a lie. And I think that for Ernest, based on the film, him seeing both and him wanting to, capture more love, but then being told to capture more pain by other people took a toll on him emotionally, to the point where he gave up photography altogether. And I say altogether, but actually, he did keep taking pictures, but he gave up publishing them. So the film also talks about how there are 60,000 negatives of his work found in a Swedish bank vault. How it got there, people still don't know or aren't saying, and that's what the film explores. But at his heart, he was still an artist. He was still a chronicler. He was still someone who saw what the world was, what culture was, and was capturing that as a photographer. I think that his photographs were just him communicating what he saw in the world to the rest of us. And I think that's what an artist truly is. I think a true artist is someone who is able to see the world for what it is and then communicate what they're seeing to other people. In terms of, the debate, seeing both and which one should I show, I think that's where having agency is really helpful, being able to control what you put out. If you're feeling like, oh, I noticed this painful thing and I want to share that, then you can share that. And if you notice, oh, I noticed this really joyful thing, this really beautiful thing, and I want to share that, then you can share that as well. Unfortunately, sometimes, especially artists who work for other people, you're being told what to do, what to share, and because that is how you make your money, then other people kind of dictate what you create. That is the reality of a lot of artists even now. And I think if that's the case, I think it's important for us, for you, to have some sort of other outlet that's just yours. Being able to have a space that only you control, where no one is really telling you what to do, but you're able to express yourself as you want to, I think is important for an artist. Okay, next film. That song is so beautiful. In Tick Tick Boom, Andrew Garfield stars as Jonathan Larson, who was a real-life writer. And the film is based on his one-man show called Tick Tick Boom, which documents the weeks before his 30th birthday. Around this time, Jonathan Larson is working on a musical called Superbia, which he spent the last 8 years of his life writing. And he's trying to get it off the ground, but nothing seems to be working. So Johnny, as the film calls him, Johnny feels like he's running out of time because all the people he looks up to have either been published or had their works on Broadway well before they turn 30. Tick Tick Boom shows that Jonathan Larson, in some ways, is obsessed with his work. He's neglecting his girlfriend. His best friend has gotten a job, a grown person job, and is doing really well. And Jonathan could follow in his best friend's footsteps, but he just can't. Like, even though this writing isn't working out for him, he has to do it. So in the film, eventually he gets to do a public showcase of the musical Superbia. This is just where he shows an audience, maybe some producers come and watch it, and if they really like it, then they can offer to produce the musical for him, for real. So he's working really hard on it. He gets to do a public showcase. Some producers come, someone he really looks up to shows up, and so he's very excited. Things are finally looking up. And the showcase goes well. It's very emotional, it's very heartfelt. His work is really good. And so after the showcase, he's waiting by the phone, expecting his agent to call and say, oh, this producer saw it and they really loved it, and here's, I don't know, $10,000, $50,000 to make this into a real thing. But his agent calls and she says, oh yeah, that was really good. We all had a good time. Everyone really liked it. But there has been no follow-up. There's been no feedback. No one's called to say that they want to join you in making this. And so obviously Jonathan is very defeated. And he tells her, I've spent the last 8 years of my life writing this piece, this project. What am I supposed to do now? And his agent says to him, and I quote, you start writing the next one. I want to park there just for a little bit because I'm a writer and I know how difficult it can be to even just write poetry or to write something and you keep it to yourself, but you want to share it. So you're working really hard to get it out there. That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. I haven't devoted myself to anything for 8 straight years, but he's given almost a decade of his life to this work. And it's not just like, oh yeah, like here and there. Like, he's really committed to this thing to the point, again, he's neglecting his girlfriend. His best friend is like, bro, I can't do this anymore. I need to go get a job. He's like, no, I will wait tables and I will write. This is what I'm supposed to be doing for 8 straight years. And then to be told after all that, yeah, it's good, but just go on to the next one. Just do this again, basically, for another 8 years. And maybe people will like it and want to see it. That's crazy. That's insane. I think I would give up. Like, I truly would, like, I tried. And I quit, and I'm going to go get a job, do something else with my life. And Jonathan, the movie shows, did try to do that. But his best friend, Michael, stops him and encourages him to give it another go. So Jonathan does write the next one. And the next one is Tick, Tick, Boom, the one-man show that this film is based on. And then after that, he writes the Pulitzer Prize and Tony Award-winning rock musical Rent, which changed the perception of the kind of stories that could be told on Broadway and inspired thousands, maybe millions of artists and writers and actors everywhere. Like, to think that Rent paved the way for a musical like Hamilton to be on Broadway, and then Lin-Manuel Miranda, who created Hamilton, went on to direct this movie about Jonathan Larson's life, is poetry to me. It's like, I love a good full circle moment. So just a quick note to say that I think the idea of doing the next one is also a matter of discipline. That's something I've been learning recently. Whether you're a writer and no agent will take your work, or you're an actor going to audition after audition, even making YouTube videos where people might not watch one you think is really good. If you're really about this, you start the next one, or you go to the next one, or you revisit an old one. The point is, you don't stop, you keep going. And I think that not stopping builds discipline, which will help build your character. And as all the motivational speakers will tell you, it is your character that holds you down and keeps you level-headed when you reach whatever success looks like to you. Tick, Tick, Boom is very aptly named. It gives the impression of a timer ticking before it goes off. And this is how Jonathan felt weeks before his 30th birthday. But also the film Tick, Tick, Boom is very aptly named because, sadly, Jonathan Larson passed away on the day of the first preview of Rent. So he never actually got to see any of the success that would eventually come his way. There are times when I feel like people have a strange knowing of what they're supposed to do on this earth, and that could be either consciously or subconsciously. Like, their actions just show that they just feel like this is it. And by watching this film, I felt like this was one of those times, and this is where it gets a little bit existential. But Jonathan really seemed to know that this was what he was supposed to be spending his time doing. That's why he was able to devote all of himself to it and not want to get a grown person job and want to keep working on this thing that was not working physically. I think it's so beautiful for anybody to know and to be committed to something. And I honestly just hope and pray that we're all able to see all the things we worked for be fruitful. But it does give this sense that sometimes things are bigger than us. Like, the things we do and the things we work on, the things we create, they outlive us and they reach much farther than we ever could. And I want to get back to this thought later on in this video. But also, it's one of those things where if you're gonna devote your entire life and be committed completely to something, then you have to be so sure, and you have to be so honest with yourself about how far you can go and about how sure you are. And just physically, and just by looking at where his art could reach in terms of that alone, it seemed like Jonathan was right to give so much of himself to his work, to his art, because it's literally changed the game. But I want to highlight, and this is the point of this entire video, that you should still, please, take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones, because at the end of the day, we're all still human. We all still need human connection, and we all still need to take care of ourselves, because if you're not taking care of yourself, it's so cliche to say, if you're not taking care of yourself, then everything else that you do is going to suffer for it. But yeah, I love Tick, Tick, Boom so much. I love musicals. It is on Netflix, and I don't know, it's so inspiring. Bob Marley, One Love is a film about Bob Marley and his rise to fame in the mid-1970s. So around this time, Jamaica is experiencing conflict, and there has been an attempt made on his life. So he goes to Europe, where he creates the album Exodus. And the film is just about all the stuff that comes with that, the rise to fame internationally, and all the things he goes through leading up to his death in 1981. I absolutely love this film, and I feel like the intro of this video explains why. One Love leans very heavily into the art as a higher calling thing, which is right up my alley. So I had a great time watching it. And fun fact, I got to interview Lashana Lynch, who plays Rita Marley in the movie, earlier this year. And I will link that video below. But something I told her, and I'm telling everyone that I speak to about this film, is that One Love felt like a sermon to me. I found it very inspiring, not just for artists, but for people in general. And I'm going to explain why. The music is the message is a mantra that Bob Marley really seemed to live by. For him, there was no separating the two. If he was creating or performing or singing, then he was passing along a message. In fact, the film very obviously calls him the messenger, but that is also because that is the meaning of his middle name, Nesta. So all of this, his artistry, his voice, his craft, does seem very divine. And Bob Marley is shown to have a if we build it, they will come kind of attitude. For him, his focus is not how much he can sell or giving the audiences what they want to hear. His focus is what do they need to hear? What do I need to say? And have I said it? And Bob Marley was a spiritual person, and that is shown in this film as well. So art as a higher calling is not something that is foreign to him. It was something that was very clear, very obvious to him personally, and something that he took very seriously. To him, the world needed to hear Jah's message. And he even says at some point, they don't need to like it, they just need to hear it. And then they'll like it. But as I said, at this time, Jamaica is experiencing conflict. But also at this time, a lot of African countries have either just come out of colonization or are just about to come out of colonization. And at this time as well, in the US, segregation has only just officially been ended for about a decade. So this is the world Bob Marley is living in, and I'm sure that he felt he has something to say to it. And I know that for us on the African continent, Bob Marley's songs became part of the anthems of liberation and Pan-Africanism. So it definitely went way beyond him. This bigger message seems to be why he keeps pushing through even when he gets sick. And I say seems because I'm only going off what the film showed. But again, he is just a vessel. And for him, the ultimate goal is the work, the mission, regardless of what that looks like for him. And I want to stop here and say that Rita Marley also embodied this spirit. There's a scene where she's talking to Bob and she's telling him about how she also gave up her own desires and aspirations and opportunities. For Bob, yes, but more so for the mission that she was also subscribed to. So as much as he had a higher calling and he took that very seriously, she also felt like she had a higher calling and took that very seriously. In fact, she describes herself as a soldier. She is on this mission as well. And that was what was important to her, regardless of what that looked like for her as well. And for me, that confidence and groundedness that they both had is very inspiring. Like when you know what your mission is and you know that you are doing the mission, then nothing that is happening outside of it, nothing people tell you, nothing people are doing can steer you away or make you doubt yourself. And I know that for me personally anyway, sometimes I get really conflicted, like what should I be doing and am I doing the right thing? But when that is clear to you, you're just like on go. Nothing can stop you, really. And so that is why I found this movie very inspiring, why it was like a sermon to me. But on the note of steering you away and making you doubt yourself and being clear on your mission, I want to talk about just before Margot Robbie heralded in the culture shift that was Barbie, she was showing us the price of stardom in Babylon. Now, I know a lot of people did not like this film, but I really, really enjoyed it. And sometimes I feel like that tweet, if I can't find it, the tweet says, when you watch a movie and it's the best thing you've ever seen in your life, and then you go on Rotten Tomatoes and it has like a 26%. That's how I feel about Babylon. I think it's amazing. But I can see why a lot of people weren't big fans of the movie. It is a lot. First of all, it's very long, but also it uses up all of its 18 plus rating for sure. It is about Hollywood in the 1920s. So whatever you're thinking about when you think that, that is what this film shows. Like, people literally were just out there doing whatever they wanted. And thankfully now there are more guidelines and agencies to protect people that work in the industry, you know. So this ensemble film is about the movement of Hollywood from the silent movies to the talkies and all the stuff that comes with that. But I loved it because it shows the machine of Hollywood. It shows actors, stars rising and falling. It shows how far people will go to get their foot in the door and then what they would do to stay in it. It shows beauty and the glam and the glitz of Hollywood and the life-changing opportunities that it brings, but it also shows the chaos and the grit and the blood and sweat and tears that go into making a movie. And then it shows the beauty that can come out of that blood, sweat, and tears and chaos. A lot of the characters in the film start off with a pure intent. And when I say pure, I mean like an innocent intention. They want to be part of something bigger, something that means something to other people. And that is why they want to work on sets or be actors or be in Hollywood. But as soon as they get into this machine, they forget why they went in the first place, or they're not even able to really do the things that they wanted to, or in the way that they thought they would be doing them. One of the characters that I want to come back to about this is Manny. Manny is someone who wants to work on sets, and this is the reason why, because he wants to be part of something bigger. Margot Robbie's character, Nellie, is also someone that wants to be a part of something bigger, so she wants to be an actress. And Brad Pitt's character, Jack Conrad, is someone who also has this intention. An angle that the film took that I love is Jack Conrad is a big star. He's been in the industry for a while. He is the leading man, top guy. He's in all the films. He makes a lot of money, and it makes a lot of money for the studios. So he is like really well sought after. He's at all of the parties. He's really popular. He is that guy. But he also is someone who wants to be part of something bigger, and that's why he's doing this in the first place. And so he speaks a lot about high art. He keeps saying that he thinks movies are also high art. He spent a lot of time convincing other people or telling other people that movies are also high art. And he does this because around this time, Broadway is the high art. It is where all the rich people go to. It is exclusive. And the poor people would go see movies because they couldn't afford to go to Broadway. But to Jack, the movies are also important. Look how many people he's reaching. Look how much hope he's giving to the masses. This is also high art. But as time goes on, especially as he gets older, he realizes that he's not the leading man anymore. No one really wants him to star in their movie. He's just doing the random ones that the studios are throwing out. That's all he can get now. When he gets to that point in time, it seems like he is now trying to convince himself that what he's doing is still important. I love the scene where he goes into a journalist's office, and this journalist has basically written an article that says that his career is over. So they go and they have a discussion, and again, Jack wants to be part of something bigger, and it seems like he's dissatisfied because that hasn't happened yet. But I would argue that it has, and so would the journalist. Once he has done his job as an actor, and that film hits the screens in theaters or in our day in houses, when people who do not know him personally are watching him on screen, he has at that point become a part of something bigger than himself. And the journalist lets him know this. She tells him this beautiful anecdote of 50 years after he's dead. If a kid who is born 50 years after he's dead grows up and watches one of his films, even though he is no longer alive, he will live again on the screen. And he might inspire this kid, even though he breathed his last before the kid breathed his first. I just love the way she said that, which is true. And then she also says this to him, and I wrote it down because I loved it so much. She says, "Your time today is through, but you will spend eternity with angels and ghosts." That is poetry. Shout out to Damien Chazelle, who wrote and directed this movie. And it reminds me of, this actually just happened yesterday. I was watching a cover of a Lucky Dube song with my dad. Lucky Dube was tragically killed in 2007. But we were watching a cover that was maybe posted 5 years ago on YouTube. And my dad said, musicians never die. Which is true. It's the point of this whole video. When you make something and you release it to people, it has gone beyond you. And in a way, so has your essence. Your essence lives on in that work, even when you are no longer here. So that is what she's telling Jack. Your films will live on after you. And so in that sense, you are a part of something that is bigger than you. So then my question is, okay, if that is the case, why is he still dissatisfied? And at first I thought it was an ego thing. Maybe he wanted it to be about him forever. Why can't I be leading man forever? Why can't people, know my name forever? And I do think that plays into it. But I also think that with the machine, the way it works is you give the people what they want, even if you don't think it's good or it's not true to you. And I think that was also weighing on Jack. He was doing movies he didn't think were really good. He knew they were not good movies. The studios knew they weren't good movies, and they knew that each other knew that they weren't good movies, but they were doing them anyway because people were watching them. He needed to do them to make money, so he did. Not the Coco Jones movie. I was an employee.
And you would do it too for a check. I was an employee.
To the machine, it's not really about you, it's about the numbers. That's what is important to them. But also in a strange way, it is about you because you are the one who can get them the numbers. And if you can't get them the numbers, then they will find somebody else who will. So if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay having a job, you do the thing. I think that is where Jack's dissatisfaction came from. So that leads me to this that I want to say is I think it is important as an artist, as a creative, especially if you're working for somebody else, to be centered in yourself. Your work cannot be what defines you. That goes for anybody actually. Your work cannot be what defines you, but especially creatives, especially people who have fans, because that can get to your head. It's just human nature. It is important to be centered enough in yourself to know that when all that goes away, you are still good. And I think that if you are not centered in yourself, the machine will chew you up and will spit you out. Because again, even though it centers you, even though it gives you a spotlight, even though there are people calling your name, it knows that it's not really about you. And it knows that when it is done with you, it will go on to the next person. It needs to do that to stay alive. So then the question is, what do you have when all that is done? And when all the lights go down, you are only left with yourself. So are you someone that you're proud of? I love the ending of this movie. It is very chaotic, but also very beautiful. So at the end, Manny goes in to watch a movie. Now at this point, Manny has left the industry. He is done because it literally was risking his life, risking his peace of mind. So he leaves. He hasn't even seen a movie in years. That's how done he is with the whole thing. But today he is in a movie theater and he is watching a movie. And at the end of the movie, the film Babylon is showing Manny and us these clips of like the history of film, our history of film. And I am watching this right as an audience member who loves film. I'm someone who made the decision of what to study at university because I watched Disney Channel a lot. That I'm the person who's like, oh my gosh, yeah, film is everything. It is so inspiring. That's me, right? So I'm watching this with Manny and I am seeing all the things that I love about film. That magical feeling when you hear the intro song that the studios have at the beginning, or when you see people performing and singing and dancing, and when you see the sets and the lights, just that feeling that I get when I watch it. I'm seeing that all play out on screen. I'm seeing Manny watch that as well. And Manny gets very emotional. Like he starts crying as this is playing out. Because again, he has left all of this behind. It was costing him peace. It was costing him himself. It almost killed him, literally. But at the same time, look how beautiful it is. And look how inspired all these people around him are. I wrote this down when I watched the film for the first time. But I wrote that film is everything and it is nothing. Again, I'm one of those people that say it is everything. It is inspiring. It brings joy. It brings hope. It makes you forget your worries even for, I don't know, 90 minutes. It is that powerful to our emotions and to our minds. But also some would say it is nothing. Some would say it's a lie. It is selling you a dream because what it gives you is intangible. And when the movie's done, we got to black, you have to go back to what is tangible, which is your real life, your family, your work, everything that is. And I know what that feels like, honestly, because I've left movie theaters and stepped right onto the street and been like, what is my life? Like, I've had those moments. You return to real life, what is tangible. But then my question to that is, how does the intangible affect the tangible? All the films I talked about today do have some sadness in them, but I want to say that if you're an artist or creative, your life does not have to be sad. Again, the one thing that I will keep reiterating is that you need to take care of yourself because you are human first. You are you first. When all this goes away, this is all you have. And hopefully other things too, but you know what I mean. So thank you so much for watching this video. It was a longer one, so if you are here right now at this time, thank you for watching this. I want this video to come out just before Christmas, so Merry Christmas if you celebrate. And also, it's been almost a year since I started doing this YouTube thing, so thanks for joining me this entire year. If you've watched every video, if you watched a few, if you've only seen this one, I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the new year. Happy New Year.